Assalamu alaikum. This is Muhammad Bashir. I'm an attorney out of Elizabeth, New Jersey. I want to talk to you about Black Lives Matter. First of all, let me not judge it or state anything about it that I really don't know. I've been following on the media and different sources, Twitter, Facebook, etc. And let me say, first of all, congratulations to the movement. Second of all, it's a movement whose time is come. Thirdly, I'm praying hard that your movement accomplishes the goals that you set out for yourself as opposed to the goals that other people would want to see defined for you. But let me just give a word of 28 years of legal experience, criminal court experience, criminal justice experience, advice, and maybe recommendation. And maybe recommendation might be a strong word because there are probably some people who are younger, more active in the street, who would probably be able to give me some recommendations. But if there's an experience that I give to you that you can use, please accept it. And if it's not, then dust it off and go ahead and do your thing because you're needed. Your movement is needed. I hope that when someone says Black Lives Matter, that they mean that they really believe that the culture is ready to change. The kind of change that Martin Luther King talked about when he said we need a complete revolution of values. If you are fighting for Black lives to matter and you don't believe for one moment that the country is willing to change its value system as to what it values, then you may be replaying a scenario that has been played out throughout history when the culture pretended that it was willing to change. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. You know for a fact that Black lives never mattered in this country, no matter what anybody said. The first founding people of this country, and I never call him a founding father. My father would be insulted to hear me call Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, James Madison, Aaron Burr, people like that, slave owners, rapists, founding fathers, and give them the dignity that I give my father by calling him father. So I'll call them the founders of this republic. They put into that Constitution the document that we are all hoping is this ideal of egalitarianism. They put into that document and to the Declaration of Independence that they hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, if you just take that and you put it in the context of when it was written and where Black lives were at that particular point, you knew then that they were writing into their institutions that Black lives did not matter. There eventually came a time where Black lives as a commodity, I'm talking about a commodity meaning something like a bag of wheat or maybe a jug of rum or a carton of cigarettes. That's a commodity. Well, Black people were a commodity, and so therefore that commodity began to impact on how it is they were going to govern. And so therefore they had to write that commodity in because that commodity was beginning to shape the power structure between the North and the South. There was an abolitionist movement where people said Black lives matter, and that didn't sway or move the government, except that they found a way to maneuver restrictions on Black people from slave to separation. There was a movement of Black Lives Matter when there was an anti-lynching effort. And even though they never passed an anti-lynching bill, it was the people of their time thought that maybe the government was ready or the culture was ready to change and therefore move in a direction of saying that Black Lives Matter and opening the door for Black people to have the equal opportunity that the government and that the culture says that exists with all people. But again, the government and the culture was not ready to change, and therefore it didn't change. You have your Emmett Tills in the 50s, and that's following lynching. So you have your Emmett Tills and you have your 1960s and everything where Black people stood their ground and said Black Lives Matter. I never forget being a kid and the signs that the protesters who sat in Charlotte, sat in lunch counters and things like that, and who protested, and even the big furrow was Selma. There were signs out there that said, "I am a man." What are they saying? They're saying our lives matter. Black Panther Party for self-defense comes about, and one of the principles of it is to oppose police brutality. Again, a concept that is almost 400 years, 300 years old, where the people were saying Black Lives Matter, hoping that the culture and the country was ready for the kind of material change that Dr. King had hoped that they were ready for, said that they needed, a complete revolution of values. So if you're saying Black Lives Matter, and your understanding is that the culture is ready now for change, maybe the internet has brought more people who can come together and coalesce and say, you know what, there is a moral issue here, separate and apart from any economic issue which may have been. We are now going to accentuate the moral issue here in America. Well, the law does not reflect that. The culture does not reflect that. The Constitution still does not reflect that. Even if you go back and look at your civil rights bills, your civil rights bills are a reflection that the white community refused to enforce laws that were designed for them, because black people already knew that they were human beings. They already knew that they should have the right to live fairly in a particular housing place or wherever they wanted to. Who then were these laws designed to say you can't stop them from living in the place that they want to live? You can't discriminate from a black person from getting the job that they want to have. These laws were targeting white people. And so therefore, what you now have, if you still have that construct still existing, if you still have police brutality existing, if you still have gerrymandering, and if you still have people attacking voting rights, it means that they haven't learned the lesson that they need to learn as it relates to Black Lives Matter, which may mean that they haven't changed. They haven't had that revolution of values. Hopefully your movement of Black Lives Matter will give them that revolution of values. But what needs to change? The question then is, if you're talking about criminal justice, what is it that you're putting out on the table for change? You know that Mike Brown's case, the matter was presented to a grand jury, and the prosecutor had control over the grand jury. You know that in Staten Island, where the brother was choked to death, I can't breathe. You know that that matter was presented to a grand jury, and the grand jury no-billed what we all saw was blatant murder. You all know what's going on in Baltimore, that there's a cover-up of the death of a young black man. When he's being dragged, it's clear that he does not have the use of his legs. Their argument is, oh, well, this is the way perps do so they can keep from having to walk. Well, I don't know a lot of perps that want to get their behinds kicked for no reason. So I'm going to pretend that I can't walk. I'm going to get dragged. No, that doesn't make sense. If you're under arrest, you know you're under arrest. Either you're going to fight or you're not going to fight. But you're not going to be dragged because your legs don't work. Which suggests to me, having seen a number of these kind of circumstances, that his legs were not functioning even as far back as when they first placed the handcuffs on him on tape. So we don't know what happened prior to the tape.